58-year-old man named Inuyashiki has just moved with his family into a house in Tokyo, hoping to provide them with a better life. However, despite his efforts, he remains completely unappreciated. His wife and 2 children despise him, and the society sees him as just another faceless worker. Every morning, he endures the suffocating subway commute, only to spend his day being humiliated at work by his boss. One night, on his way home, Inuyashiki witnesses a street robbery. But he hesitates as he is caught between stepping in and walking away. Ultimately, he is overcome by fear, and he chooses to walk away. Just then his daughter Mari happens to be nearby and sees everything. This moment further cements her perception of him as weak and pathetic. Feeling much worse than ever, Inuyashiki returns home and sits outside as he becomes lost in thought. As he reflects on his miserable existence, a stray dog walks up to him. There was a note attached to its collar. The note reveals that its name is Hanako and pleads for someone to take care of it. Just then, his wife steps out, and before Inuyashiki can explain the situation, she orders him to get rid of the dog. The following day, Inuyashiki goes for his routine medical checkup, but he instead receives devastating news. He has terminal cancer. The disease has spread aggressively, leaving him with only 3 months to live. Shocked by the news, he tries to call his family, but despite seeing his call, none of them answer. That evening at dinner, he tries to share the news with his family, but no one listens. Instead, they complain about trivial matters, and Marie once again tells him to get rid of the dog. Feeling completely alone, Inuyashiki has no choice but to comply. So he takes Hanako out, walks several kilometers away, and releases her. But as he turns to leave, the loyal dog follows him. So, instead of walking, he runs hoping the dog will turn back. Soon, he arrives at a park, believing he has finally lost her, only to turn and see her waiting patiently for him. Overcome with guilt, he realizes his mistake and quietly apologizes to the dog. Then as he raises his head, he notices a young boy sitting nearby in the park. Suddenly, an intense flash of light engulfs the area. Hanako immediately runs away just before a massive explosion takes place. The shockwave throws Inuyashiki backward, leaving him dazed. As he struggles to comprehend what just happened, he sees strange inhuman figures appearing around him with their forms not clearly visible in the blinding light. When he wakes up in the morning, Inuyashiki is shocked to realize that he had slept in the park, and also he can now see perfectly without his glasses. Confused but relieved, he returns home with Hanako. At home, he carries on with his morning routine. During breakfast, he eats miso soup, but an unquenchable thirst suddenly overtakes him, and he quickly reaches for the tap to drink water. But even this does nothing to satisfy him. Then excusing himself, he walks into the bedroom and notices thick smoke coming out of his hands. Alarmed, he quickly removes his shirt, only to witness something completely unnatural. His right arm suddenly transforms into a mechanical weapon. Before he can process what's happening, the weapon discharges all the soup he had eaten just minutes ago. Now very much afraid, he touches his face, feeling an unusual texture around his neck. As he presses on it, his face and ears detach from his head and reveal a mechanical core inside. When he stands to look at his reflection in the mirror, he is horrified. His body is no longer human. As panic sets in, his arms transform into weapons, and he struggles to regain control. In the meantime, Hanako begins barking frantically. Hearing the commotion, Marie calls out from the hallway. Just as she reaches the door, Inuyashiki's body miraculously returns to normal. With no trace of his transformation, he breathes a sigh of relief as he reassures his wife that everything was fine. Meanwhile, Hiro, who is a high school student in the same class as Mari, decides to visit his best friend, Chako. A few days earlier, Chako had stopped attending school due to the relentless bullying he had suffered. As they talk, Hiro takes him to the balcony and points at a bird flying nearby. Then pointing his finger like a gun, he fires. Suddenly, the bird explodes, leaving Chako in shock. Hiro was actually the boy that was at the park with Inuyashiki the night of the strange explosion. Unable to comprehend what just happened, Chako follows Hiro to the garage, where his friend shows him more of his newfound abilities. Using his hands, he controls the parked cars to crash into each other. When Chako was still confused, Hiro finally revealed the full extent of his power, as he removed his shirt, revealing that his entire body can transform into a weapon. He declares himself a superhero, as he believes that he is no longer human. Meanwhile, Inuyashiki is yet to uncover the true nature of his new abilities. Instead, he believes that he has become a monster, and he continues to struggle to make sense of his transformation. That morning, his troubles worsen when he is unexpectedly fired from his job. With no way to pay his mortgage, his greatest fear becomes a reality. His family's well-being is now at risk. As he drags himself back home, he spots an injured pigeon lying on the ground. As he picks it up, something incredible happens. He can see exactly what is wrong with the bird, as if his mind is diagnosing its injuries in real time. Within seconds, the pigeon is completely healed and flies away, leaving Inuyashiki stunned. That was when he realizes that whatever happened to him may not be a curse after all. Soon, Inuyashiki discovers a new ability when he starts to hear the desperate plea of a woman begging a doctor to save her 10-year-old son. Although he could hear the voices clearly, he sensed that it was coming from a nearby hospital. Without hesitation, he heads there. Upon arrival, he finds the doctor talking with the mother of the boy, who is unconscious and dependent on life support. So, Inuyashiki quietly snuck into the room as he used his newfound abilities to quickly analyze the cause of the illness. He then places his hands on the boy's head, and within moments, the healing process is complete, and the boy's eyes open for the first time in a long while. Just then, the child's mother enters the room, and she is shocked to see a stranger by her son's bedside. She quickly calls for the doctor, but she suddenly realizes the miracle on her child. The doctor and the entire medical staff is left stunned. Overwhelmed with joy, Inuyashiki quietly exits the hospital, realizing he hasn't felt this happy and fulfilled in years. The next day, Chako returns to school, only to be confronted by Tekken, a notorious bully in his class who had threatened him before. Just as the bully attempts to intimidate him, Hiro intervenes. When Tekken tries to grab Hiro's shirt, Hiro retaliates by gripping his arm with crushing force. This forces Tekken down on his knees as Hiro demands he return the money he had taken from Chako. When Tekken claims that he doesn't have the full amount, Hiro threatens to kill him with his pointed finger, just like he had killed the bird. However, Chako quickly steps in, knowing exactly how bad this could turn out. Despite his hatred for Tekken, he doesn't want Hiro to become a murderer. Without another word, Hiro walks away. However, one of his classmates, Cheyenne, follows him outside. She wants to talk to Hiro as she musters her courage and confesses her feelings for him. To her surprise, Hiro tells her that he is happy about her confession and sincerely thanks her for sharing her emotions with him. As he walks home, Hiro receives a call from his mother. She asks him to visit his father, who isn't feeling too well and wants to see him. Although Hiro resents the man for abandoning him and his mother to start another family, he decides to go. When he arrives, his father greets him and hands over the monthly child support to him. During dinner, Hiro is warmly received by his stepmother and half-siblings. While he finds them likable, his resentment toward his father remains. As they enjoy dessert, a dark impulse seizes Hiro with the urge to kill his father. But as he watches his siblings laugh, unaware of the underlying tension, he suppresses the thought and leaves the house. As he walks home, still very much consumed by anger, Hiro walks through the neighborhood and enters an unsuspecting home. Without hesitation, he shoots the man inside, then mercilessly kills his wife. On the other hand, Inuyashiki has been using his abilities to heal children at a hospital, but then, he suddenly hears the desperate screams of a young girl. Without hesitation, he rushes towards the source of the cries, only to arrive at a house where he finds the lifeless body of a young woman on the floor. Desperate to try to heal her, Inuyashiki uses his powers, but he discovers that it has its limits. They do not allow him to bring back the dead. As he goes inside the house, he finds that the girl's parents also lay dead on the floor. He then finds Hiro standing right in the middle of the massacre. When Hiro turned, he saw Inuyashiki, and to ensure that there were no witnesses, Hiro raised his finger and shot him, with the force sending him flying. Assuming he is dead like the others and with all evidence erased, Hiro leaves the scene. However, Inuyashiki soon regains consciousness and immediately runs out to find Hiro. But by the time he arrives, Hiro is already gone, having vanished without a trace. The next day, the news is filled with reports of the horrific crime that took place in Shofu City, where an entire family was brutally murdered. Strangely, despite police confirming that the victims were shot, no bullet traces were found. Meanwhile, Hiro meets again with his friend Choko, who confronts him about the massacre. Without hesitation, Hiro confesses, declaring that he is no longer human but something greater, a god. Despite this terrifying revelation, he reassures Choko that he will always protect him. However, his words do not bring comfort. Instead, Choko is overcome with fear and disappointment, and he eventually ends up telling Hiro to stay away from him. Back home that evening, Hiro's mother gives her son devastating news. She has been diagnosed with cancer and only has a short time left to live. Shocked and heartbroken, Hiro holds her, refusing to accept her fate. He vows that he will not let her die, believing she has done nothing to deserve such suffering. That night, Inuyashiki, who was burdened by his own failures, suddenly starts to hear a voice pleading for divine intervention. It was Choko who was at the park praying for someone to stop Hiro before he could kill again. Moved by the desperate pleas, Inuyashiki takes Hanako and flies to the park where Choko was. Determined to use his newfound abilities for good, he explains to Choko how he and Hiro gained their superhuman powers, telling him that both of them had been at the park that night during the mysterious explosion that had transformed them into something beyond human. Desperate for a way to stop Hiro, Choko asks if Inuyashiki has any weaknesses that could be exploited. The old man reveals that his only vulnerability so far has been miso soup, which hadn't gone well with his body. From that moment on, Choko commits himself to training Inuyashiki, teaching him everything he has observed about Hiro's abilities. Their first lesson was mastering the ability to fire shots with the fingers. After several failed attempts, Inuyashiki slowly starts to get the hang of it. Exhausted from the training, Inuyashiki goes to get some water to quench his thirst. However, moments after drinking, his body violently rejects the liquid. Chako, observing the incident, examines the label and realizes it was an isotonic sports drink containing sodium. Drawing a connection with the miso soup Inuyashiki had earlier, which also contains salt, Chako concludes that Inuyashiki's body is incapable of digesting sodium. Meanwhile, Hiro, still grappling with the news of his mother's illness, accompanies her to a doctor's appointment. To their astonishment, the physician delivers an exciting news. Every malignant cell in her body has vanished, and she is now completely cured. The two were overjoyed as Hiro walks home with his mother. However, their relief is short-lived. A group of police officers suddenly intercepts them, intending to question Hiro regarding the murder of the family in Shofu City. Realizing the danger, Hiro makes the decision to escape. The officers followed him, and as they finally had him cornered, Hiro opened fire and eliminated 3 officers in the process. And despite being pursued by the highly trained task force, he manages to disappear into the city. Hours later, news broadcasts across the country warn the public about Hiro, who is now considered a fugitive. The next day, after class, Cheyenne sees Hiro in a deserted part of the city, and she invites him to her home. She assures him that the apartment is safe since only she and her elderly grandmother live there. With nowhere else to go, Hiro accepts her offer. Elsewhere, Mari notices Chako walking with her father at the train station. Curious about their relationship, she confronts Chako, who quickly fabricates a story about meeting him through an online game. Back at Cheyenne's apartment, Hiro watches the news and discovers that his actions have had devastating consequences for his mother. Since his escape, several news reporters have swarmed her home, blaming her for his crimes and hurling cruel accusations. The constant harassment was unbearable, and unable to cope with the pressure, his mother had taken her own life. Realizing that the only person he loved is dead, Hiro searches the internet until he stumbles on a chat where users are discussing the events. One particular comment stands out as one young man proudly admits that he was the one who had leaked Hiro's mother's address to the press. What disturbs Hiro even more is the flood of congratulatory messages praising the act. Deciding to take revenge, Hiro uses his superpower and hacks into the culprit's computer screen. The boy, recognizing the infamous fugitive, reacts with excitement, unaware of the imminent danger. Without hesitation, Hiro raises his finger and fires directly through the screen. The boy, now in agony, begs for mercy, but Hiro remains unmoved as he finishes him off with one last shot. He then methodically hunts down every individual in the chat who encouraged the leak, eliminating them one by one. This unprecedented massacre sends shockwaves through Tokyo, throwing the authorities into total chaos. Late that night, Cheyenne wakes up and finds Hiro by the sink. As they talk, Hiro makes a shocking confession that he is responsible for the death of the family at Shofu City. Cheyenne refuses to believe he could commit such atrocity, but Hiro proves his claim by revealing his robotic arm. To further convince her, he takes her flying as he effortlessly soaring through the sky with his new mechanical abilities. As they drift above the city, Cheyenne begins to cry as she expresses her sadness over the lives Hiro has taken. She reminds him that his victims also had dreams, loved ones, and futures that have now been ended. Despite the horror of his actions, she insists that she wants to stay by his side. Hiro was moved by her decision, and he promises that he will never leave her. Eventually, they return home together. Few days later, as Cheyenne gets up for a glass of water, armed agents storm into her house. Chaos erupts as she screams for Hiro to escape, but instead of running, he throws himself over her as he tries to shield her from the onslaught. As the bullets rain down on them, Hiro is hit by several bullets, but even at that, he manages to retaliate with lethal force as he eliminates every agent. As the dust settles, he looks around the room and he finds Cheyenne's grandmother is dead. When he eventually turns to Cheyenne, he finds her body injured with several bullet wounds. Despite his efforts to protect her, she has not survived the attack. With nothing left to do and with nowhere else to go, Hiro decides to leave with his heart now consumed by an even deeper thirst for vengeance. The following day, Inuyashiki warns his family to remain inside and avoid all electronic screens. Hiro has adopted a terrifying new method of attack, as he now uses digital broadcasts to strike his victims. However, his family ignores the warning and goes out for their daily routines. Hours later, Hiro hijacks the city's massive digital billboards and broadcasts his own message. He announces to the public that the police had raided a home and slaughtered an elderly woman and a high school student. He tells everyone that is a declaration of war by the forces, and he vows to retaliate. He then concludes by stating that his war against Japan will only end when everyone is dead. Then suddenly, he raises his finger to the screen and begins executing people on the streets remotely, showcasing the extent of his devastating powers. Meanwhile, Inuyashiki, who is training with Chako, hears the distant screams of the civilians and rushes to intervene. As Hiro continues his shooting, a live news report starts monitoring the disaster. During the broadcast, the journalist suddenly gets a call from Hiro, and when he picks it up, he is suddenly shot in the head, and this sends the city into further panic. Elsewhere, Mari and her classmates are on a field trip when they receive news of the massacre. Not knowing the danger, they take out their phones to follow the unfolding events, only to become Hiro's next victims. Amidst the massive chaos, Inuyashiki uses his powers to seize control of the digital screens, broadcasting a desperate plea from Chako, urging people to turn off their devices and stay away from all screens. With this counterattack, the battle between Hiro and Inuyashiki escalates into a full-scale digital war, with several innocent lives hanging in the balance. Hiro immediately changes tactics and launches a barrage of missiles to destroy the city's massive screens, using the chaos as cover to bomb several buildings in his path. One of these buildings was where Mari is. As Hiro continues his rampage, Inuyashiki suddenly appears behind him, pleading with him to stop. He reveals that on the night Hiro was hit by the bomb, he too was there and had also underwent the same transformation. However, Hiro remains unwavering in his mission to annihilate the country. Seeing no other option, Inuyashiki attacks, triggering a critical aerial battle. Missiles rain down as Hiro relentlessly pursues Inuyashiki through the city. As they continue to battle, Inuyashiki suddenly hears his daughter's desperate cries for help. But as he moves to rescue her, Hiro intercepts him, slamming the old man into the side of a building. The impact sends Inuyashiki crashing into a news helicopter covering the story. Before anyone can react, Hiro arrives and throws the reporter and cameraman from the aircraft. Inuyashiki manages to save one of them, but before he can act further, Hiro shoots the pilot in the head. The helicopter immediately goes out of control and heads for a direct collision with a nearby building. With no time to think, Inuyashiki grabs the remaining journalist and escapes just as the aircraft crashes into the structure. But his efforts are in vain because minutes later, Hiro approaches and kills the survivor. He then turns his attention back to Inuyashiki, attempting to convince him to join forces with him. As Hiro tries to hydrate himself, Inuyashiki sees an opportunity. He immediately destroys the bottle in Hiro's hand and in turn tries to drink from his own bottle. Instead, Hiro attacks and takes the bottle from him, not knowing that it is filled with isotonic liquid. So he drinks the water and then prepares to finish off Inuyashiki. However, his system begins to malfunction, and just as he is about to deliver the finishing blow, his internal mechanisms fail completely, and his body begins to self-destruct. Realizing he has been tricked, Hiro struggles to regain control, but it is too late. Inuyashiki launches his missiles, ensuring that Hiro falls to his death with the explosions. With the battle over, Inuyashiki rushes back to find Mari, but she has already succumbed to her injuries. Desperate to revive her, he administers CPR, and after several tense moments, she comes back to life, and with his power, Inuyashiki fully heals her and then embraces his daughter in relief. But the reunion is short-lived because moments later, Hiro makes a return. He immediately guns down every survivor in sight, leaving Mari for last. Just as he is about to kill her, Inuyashiki intervenes and grabs his arm. But Mari is still hit by the shot. As she fights for her life and Inuyashiki tries to get to her, Hiro viciously beats him down. With his strength fading, his robotic head opens, revealing to Mari who her father really is. Despite being overwhelmed by her father's revelation, Mari watches as Hiro humiliates Inuyashiki, and after seeing that he is indestructible, Hiro turns his attention to Mari. So he grabs Mari and takes her to the edge of the skyscraper building where he throws her off. Seeing the threat to his daughter's life, Inuyashiki's body suddenly becomes supercharged with immense power as he projects towards Hiro and totally obliterates him with a single blow. He then speeds toward Mari, barely catching her before she hits the ground. In the following days, the media reports Hiro's death, but his body is never recovered. Only shattered remains of his body were found. At the end of the movie, we see that Inuyashiki's life was back to the usual, but this time, Mari knows her father's secret. Meanwhile, Hiro makes one final visit to Chako's place. Despite the fear in his eyes, Chako is relieved to see him alive. As they prepare to play one last game together, he turns to speak, but Hiro is already gone, leaving everyone in anticipation of what will happen in the future. And that's the story of the movie Inuyashiki, a 2018 action science fiction movie. If you enjoyed the recap, consider dropping a like on the video and subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.